Yeah. Okay, I think we're ready to get started. Thank you so much for being here. I'm going to stand over here because we have video and audio. So, and Bruce is handling that, so smile at him when you ask questions. Good afternoon and welcome to GSEA's panel discussion on alternatives to academic or alt-ac careers. I'm Dawn. I'm the GSEA president this year, and I'm so pleased to present 5 panelists who will offer narratives and tips from their own graduate school to alt-ac career experiences. And it's GSEA's hope that we can offer a program that opens a discussion about the value of the English graduate degree outside of traditional academic teaching positions and a broader perspective on life, work, and a humanities education. So with that, I'm going to present the panel, but I'm going to let them talk about their own careers. But I'll just briefly run down who is here, and then I'll let them talk about their experiences. But first, on the far right, we have Laura Bush, who is the Communications Director and Content Strategist for Highway 20 Design and Technology for Nonprofits. Thank you for being here. Then we have Michelle Iwen, who is the Assistant Director of the ASU Origins Project. Then next to her, we have Sydney Lines, who's the Communications Program Coordinator for ASU Lightworks. And then next to her, we have Laura Waugh, who is formerly the Publications and Proposal Specialist at Snell Wilmer, and I'm sure she's going to talk about, she's in transition, like as we speak, but your new position.
Which means I'm employed.
She's employed!
Moving on. So.
Yes. And then lastly, Hettel is the Assistant Director of the IHR Nexus Lab. So what we're going to do to start is move from one panelist to another, and I'm going to ask you to tell your story of how you transitioned from a graduate degree, and if you could give details about where you received your graduate degree, what your training is in, what your training is in, and how you made the transition from academia to your current career. So is there someone who would like to start, or in a particular order that, would you mind starting, Laura, and moving this way? Okay, great, thank you so much.
Try to make this as succinct as possible. So I'm 51 years old, and I started my PhD here at ASU in what did I say to myself? 1994. And it took me 6 years to finish the PhD. And at the time, I was actually dating someone, and I didn't get on the job market, which I, in some ways, regret. My advice to you is if you don't get a tenure track position, don't get ghettoized in the academy. Or if you get ghettoized, get out as soon as you can. It's just not a very comfortable place, unless you have a partner who is, combining financial resources, unless you just love what you're doing, unless it just really works for you. One of the things that happened for me is after that PhD, I got a full-time position at the Center for Learning and Teaching Excellence, which is where I had been working as a graduate student. And I got into faculty development. Everything that I've done at the academy has made a difference for me since my transition. Now, my transition out of the academy only happened 2 years ago. I have been at ASU in different units for many years, so almost a 20-year career. I also got my master's degree when I was 26, and I started teaching full-time as an English department faculty member at Ricks College in Idaho. Some of you may know that as BYU Idaho now. I'm actually not a practicing Mormon any longer. I wrote my dissertation on Mormon women's autobiographies, and I want to talk just a little bit about that at some point. So I've done literary criticism, I published in that, and I was doing a lot in technology as a graduate student. Bruce and I were doing a lot of that work. We're thinking about using technology in composition and literature classrooms. So I started at the Center for Learning and Teaching Excellence, working in faculty development. Then they tried really to kill the Center for Learning and Teaching Excellence and my position, and I got pushed off to be a lecturer at ASU Polytechnic. So I did that for about 3 years, but I parked myself at the door thinking this is not really what I want to do forever, because I was mostly teaching online, because I was one of the few people who was willing to do that. I think there are some things that have happened for teaching online that have made it better, but at the time I ended up writing a publication that I'm pretty proud of, but that was teaching literature and language online by MLA and it's called Solitary Confinement, Managing Relational Angst in the Online Classroom. I did not like teaching online and being so isolated from my students. I saw all sorts of benefits for the students, but for me, personally and emotionally, it was crushing. I felt all alone. I had tons of freedom. I hated almost every moment of it. But I learned a great deal, and the problem is I'm just really thorough too. I really care, and I assume most of you also care. So I moved. I also had done some work with Preparing Future Faculty program. Does that still exist as a way to find alternative? Okay,
Yeah,
good.
Eric runs it actually.
All of you.
Yes, so I did the Preparing Future Faculty program and got a Woodrow Wilson Scholarship and did some work with a nonprofit organization called Global Interactions. And I had also always been interested in nonprofit organizations. I ended up making a big leap from being a lecturer to, I saw an opportunity to go to the ASU Lodestar Center for Philanthropy and Nonprofit Innovation. It's on the downtown campus. Get a certificate, but also I proposed to them that I could help them put their professional development certificate online. So I worked as a lecturer while also I wrote a proposal. I went to them and said, I can do this for you. I mean, I was very bold. But I was getting tired of being paid to read bad writing, quite frankly. I had taught 5 courses of many students for many years. So I was getting burned out of writing, grading. I think that's the worst part of this profession, even though it's the most important part in many ways. I don't want to diminish it at all, but it's extremely time consuming. So I went to the ASU Lodestar Center, ended up creating myself a full-time position there. That was great, but I was still marginalized, still not making much money, still not, for 3 years, never getting a raise. And in 2008, I had it. So I literally jumped off the cliff and started my own business, a writing business. Within a few months, I had to replace my air conditioner, my hot water heater. I got breast cancer. My car got demolished. Everything you could imagine went wrong that year, and I thought I'd made the biggest mistake of my life. Fortunately, within a number of months, I got connected with the person that I'm working for now, who, so I started to do, and I'm trying to wrap this up as quickly as possible. I was doing web content writing for for-profit organizations. Carla had started a business, and she had been working at it for about 3 years, so she had a better pipeline than I did. And we found out that we were a perfect match. She's 30 years old. She was committed to nonprofits, and she'd done a bold thing and thought that there could be money in nonprofits. We're doing very well together. I just started full-time with her. I've been working as a freelance independent contractor with her, but we've just stepped it up. We're growing. My networking connections, my PhD gives us credibility. My skills with cultural competency, technology, all of that have all come to create this really, like, finally a job I love. So there are no easy answers to this, but that's how I got here. I'm sorry I took 7 minutes. I had to get that all down in 5 minutes.
I'm Jacqueline. Yeah, okay. Hi, everyone. I have sort of a similar experience in the sense that I went all over and did many things. I don't have an English PhD. I actually have a critical and cultural theory PhD from a foreign institution. So I started here at ASU, did my BA in English, MFA in creative writing, and it was right at the MFA period that I realized I was in love with critical theory. And while I liked writing, I loved theory, and I wanted to keep thinking that way. So I moved to Wales and got my PhD at Cardiff University, which has the first Center for Critical and Cultural Theory in the world. And Stuart Hall was my advisor's advisor, so I felt this is where I needed to be. Not knowing that by going to a foreign institution, I would kind of abandon all of my networks here in the States and trying to get a job in the States afterwards was challenging. While that was going on, it was a wonderful experience. I absolutely am happy that I went there and did that. I also was diagnosed with cancer, and my mother passed away. So it was a very tumultuous year during the early part of my degree program, which is when I started working. I've always worked well going to school, so I consider myself both a professional and an academic. So I kind of had these three different lives. I was being a student, I was working, and I was also going to school in Wales while living in the US. So finished my PhD and realized that I just kept getting administrative jobs, but I just kept stepping up in them. And it was they were interesting jobs. I was a program manager for one unit, then a program manager for another unit. I saw the job at the Origins Project, which is where I'm at now, and it was originally a program manager position. I interviewed, went in with the kind of not demand, but request that I'm interested in teaching one class a semester. I'm interested in making this an actual career. I want to be the associate director of your unit, in 5 years, which normally I probably wouldn't have, been so bold in the interview, but it actually has worked out really well. So I took the position. We've since reclassified it. I'm now the assistant director of educational and research programs. So I'm sort of helping to develop a curriculum based on Origins issues. So it's truly interdisciplinary. It uses English, sciences, which I have very little background in, but I have learned a surprising amount of physics in the time that I've been there. And essentially running intimate conferences. We just call them workshops. So I get to hang out with people like Steven Pinker and Noam Chomsky. So it's hugely satisfying in my intellectual life. But at the same time, I also have the other part of me that I teach one class a semester. I teach in creative writing, and I love it because I teach one class a semester. I don't feel burned out. It's a joy to go teach. I really enjoy that. But it's because it's like one small section of my day. And I also publish. So I kind of write on the side, but that's part of the way we reclassified my position. So that also counts for my contribution. So it's strange the way I kind of ended up here, but it's also been beneficial because I'm at Origins, I discovered my love for the medical humanities. So I've learned interesting new fields. I still get to work in literature because I still write in literature. It's essentially, I realized I went overseas to do an English degree with a different name because my dissertation really was basically a literature dissertation, 18th century women's writing and the madhouse. So, and then career projection, I really enjoy the proportion of time that I have for each facet or hat that I wear in my life. It would be interesting to teach full time. I don't know that that's my passion at this point. So I really like the balance. I like being able to, on occasion, leave my work at work and go home and, not think about it. So that's appealing. And yeah, it's interesting. I kind of the same with you. I just kind of asked for what I wanted, if that makes any sense at all, and not in a demanding way, but just presented myself as a professional, which I didn't realize for the first few years of my professional life. That's what I had to do. So I try and present myself both as an academic, as an administrator, and people treat me as such. So you actually have to kind of put yourself or present yourself in the way that you expect to be treated, which again, I don't know why it took me that long to learn, but that's my basic.
I would say it's because you're a human being and you're an English major.
Right.
Oh, English majors.
Go ahead, Sydney.
Okay. So I'm in a little bit of a different situation. I don't have a PhD. I have a master's degree that I got from the English department here in 2013. And it's kind of been a strange thing because when I graduated, I decided I'm taking a year off and then I'm going to apply for grad school and go for the PhD. And I had one plan, and it was to get into a PhD program. I didn't make a plan B because I figured I would just get into one. And I made all my applications. It was like a 7-8 month process. And then I got into some really good schools and got no funding. So I had to turn around and decline my offers and go, what am I doing with myself now? And I had been, where I'm at now at ASU Lightworks, I actually started off as a student worker when I was in my bachelor's program here. So I've been there for 4 years almost. And I just ended up kind of working my way up. I was a student worker. They liked what I did. I was really ambitious. During my master's program here, I was still working there as a management intern. And then when I graduated with my MA and told them, I plan to work for at least another year, do you want to keep me? I can continue to develop skills while I'm here. And then once the PhD happens, I can just kind of transfer to that. And they were open to it. So I stayed, and I'm still here doing it, which is great because I didn't really have to deal with, I graduated, oh my God, what am I going to do about a job? Because I had one. But the thing that's been nice about it is it's allowed me to kind of play around with the idea of maybe this is okay, it's all right. Maybe if the PhD doesn't work out, if I make another round and it doesn't work, I have to make a decision at some point about whether or not I want to go on. But the thing that I actually really like about being in the administrative side here is that I still get access to a research library. So if I want to continue to publish, I can. I don't have to pay extra to get there. If I want to be involved in the research community in terms of workshops, lectures, any of that, I have access to all of it. My unit is really supportive of me wanting to go out and do the IHR Nexus Lab. I can go to all those, the digital humanities stuff. They let me do that because it's in line with what I do, which is mostly social media, web content, things like that. So I get a lot of support that way if I want to continue on. And recently, same kind of thing. I had a meeting with my boss about a 5-year career development plan and was very open and said, I want to make one more round for the PhD. So I'm setting this up in 2 tracks, but I want to continue to develop skills that will work for both sides if it doesn't happen like last time. So it's been really nice because I've been able to just set it up and say, I want to take on events now. I want to learn how to do some project management. I want to learn how to potentially be a program manager. And then at the same time, because I'm here, I still get a tuition waiver. So if I want to continue to take classes to develop, I can do that. So it's been a really nice exploratory process for me. So that's my basic story right now. I don't have much developed at that point, but that might be helpful to some of you.
So I'm Laura Waugh. I got my PhD in 2013 here at ASU in literature. I came into the PhD program straight from my bachelor's degree at West Virginia University, but I did pick up a master's degree along the way. And my story is probably a story that I know a lot of people are facing right now, which is that I got about 2 years before my PhD and I saw the writing on the wall. There were hiring freezes, the economy had crashed, and the state of the academy was looking pretty dismal. And I was lucky enough to have a husband in a corporate sector. He's an attorney who kind of nudged me and said, look, you're going to have to start doing career development in a different way. And so about 2 years, and that last year when I was supposed to be writing my dissertation and applying to jobs, which I was also networking. I was going to every social event I could go to, political event I could go to, shaking hands, saying hello, like being really uncomfortable because I'm not necessarily, that's not my, forte necessarily. And I was putting public writing up on the internet. And by that, I don't mean like academic writing. I mean, I was writing a blog on food and literature, which got picked up because I don't know why, by like Huffington Post and CNN and a couple of other really major outlets that had, I'm really so glad I did that because applying to jobs in the corporate world, nobody cared about my dissertation on modern literature. Everybody thought it was really cool that I had a blog. But it was public writing. It was writing that I could point people to and say, look, like I can string sentences together in an intelligent way, right? Which people are really impressed by, it turns out, in the corporate world. So in my networking experience, I at some point met an attorney and had a good exchange with him. And then when I went out that last year and I got no job offers, I got no interview offers, despite the fact that I had publications, I had, a dissertation that passed without, revision. Like I'd done everything right. I got nothing. I was depressed. And so I started begging people, anybody, to take my resume and please do whatever you will with it. And happened to send it to one of these attorneys who works for Snell Wilmer, which is Phoenix's oldest, largest, and some might say most prestigious law firm in the city. And he passed it on to the marketing director, and she said, oh, we need a writer. Could you do some freelance work? And so for about 2 months, I did freelance work, which was writing website descriptions. And they were thrilled. I'm not going to pretend anything I wrote was like rocket science, but again, I was stringing sentences together in an intelligent way, and I was fairly personable. And so when a job came up to be the publications and proposal specialist, I said yes, because I had no job. And I was desperate. So I took this job, and turns out I really liked it. I managed all of their internal publications, so newsletters, legal alerts. I was basically their senior copywriter. So anything that came out of the firm that was not written by an attorney was probably written by me. And anything that came out of the firm that was written by an attorney was probably by me. No, I'm just kidding. And I also managed their major client proposals. So if a company like, say, Disney or Wells Fargo wanted legal services, they would ask the firm to send them a response to a list of 20, 50 questions. And these documents are like 50 to 70 pages long. And I would do that unique writing, and that would produce business for the firm. And I actually loved it. I never went back out on the academic market. I did apply to one job as an instructor at ASU's downtown campus, and I interviewed, and I was they are I've got an attorney who has student loans a lot, and that wasn't a feasible option for me. So that was the only time I went back out in academia. I truly loved being in the corporate sector. I loved working with, there are four Wilmer who call me Dr. Waugh. They call me Dr. Laura, with little work sometimes, but I accept it. And then 2 weeks ago, I got called a big healthcare provider. They own 19, 20 hospitals, including 20 insurance, basically. They're based in Franklin, Tennessee. Will you come be our marketing and business development manager to manage our marketing operations in Louisiana? And a great offer. And I said, yes. So that's what I'm doing now. Is it what I dreamed? I think so. Throughout all of my academic career, I'd be going, oh, if I'm living my dream, I'm going to find out in 2 weeks when I start. But that was my reality. So that's my story.
I'm Jackie Hettel, and I'm the ASU Nexus Lab. Been here for about. I got my PhD in 2013 in English linguistics, or English language studies, however you want to think of it, from the University of Georgia. Similarly to what you've heard from everyone else, I started my PhD in 2008, and when I went in, I chose my program, and I chose my field primarily because I found the research fascinating. I wasn't necessarily I wanted to teach or anything like that. I just really loved linguistics. So when I started at Georgia, I know their PhD careers. Mind you, I only degree that so having good jobs. So both going to do with the PhD, and do. So one of the flexibility in my PhD program, I literally only had to take 2 9,000 level seminars in English literature. Everything I wanted. So I took a whole bunch of linguistics, statistics, comp sci, biology, basically anything and everything that I knew could possibly make me marketable and flexible to any job market. I was keeping myself up, and I wasn't going to get myself one idea just because I thought that it was glamorous. I've always been cool in that way. So as I was at Georgia, I was a teaching assistant for their first year composition program, but then I also assisted for the Linguistic Atlas Project, they split my assistantship, my funding monies, but I had 2 full full-time kind of grad student. And the link was an over 500,000 grant into the public, all of these legacy recordings of fields. And so I did a lot of project management, data management. My major professor, who is an amazing and well-known guy who does a lot of linguistic analysis with computers. And so got into doing that. And when it came time for my dissertation, like most people had like this, but decided to go with the one actually that my major professor didn't like as much, but was focused on analyzing language in the nuclear power industry, which my father, doing the analysis I did, which would set me for potential tenure track jobs. Then also was able to do something very practical that then could be demonstrated to be applied in various business settings. So in 2002, I got an offer from Stanford University kind of started negotiating. When I went in, my because you're over managing for 750,000 of administrative capital $1,000 bill that you have to deal every throughout to make purchases. This time I'm doing my own research on based linguistic analysis, switched into about a and my asking about all the time. When I wasn't ready, so it wasn't. There wasn't the opportunity, but for those of us who decided we like the operational things, but we also like still being in the academy, it gives you all of that. But with that comes the obligation and pretty much the expectation that you basically have to be 3 people in one at all times. You have to be the tenure track kind of minded academic, especially when you're working in a university. You also have to have that business kind of corporate minded and that focus, but then also the unique things that's for full tack. And so you have to incentivize to have, and I don't know if anybody else has had that experience, but it really is the case that it's not like you're choosing one or the other. It is not a backup plan in a lot of ways if you think about skill sets for it. And it's not something that's with to do more, because it's exponential in how it all comes together. Or at least that's been my experience. So.
Thank you so much. Okay, so what we had planned is to both hear the narrative, like how did this happen, and that's what we just did. Now, what I hear from a lot of graduate students and from faculty here at ASU English is that we don't know how to prepare students to do what you all have done. We don't have a set of, heuristic or a set of instructions to mentor students or for students themselves to check a checklist of this is what I need to do. And so what I have been talking with several of the panelists about and with students about is if you could give advice of like concrete tips that you would offer in terms of preparing to apply for the types of jobs that you have, whether it be translating a CV to a resume, whether it be, some of you have already talked about, like, for instance, professionalization or courses that, that are instructive or things like that. But in terms of if you could, in the same way that we prepare for the academic job market and go through that process and have sort of a heuristic, what would you offer the room in terms of suggestions for that? So anyone
get involved with projects. The faster you can start adding projects to your resume, your very discrete things that you have done, and demonstrating that you have project management, data management, not that you took classes about it, but that you've done it. That's probably the biggest thing that you can do, the easiest thing.
But capture the results, what you produce, how you show that you made of anxiety. One of the things that to you all, because event, I wish there had been can cause this for me, but I got where I was. I want you to get how smart you are, articulate. I've got to go back and they can create things. One of the problems with me is I think things. Okay, so it's a happy medium in some ways. If they'll just flat out thing, then I can fine tune it and people are resist that. Major brand go to a style so your name completely opposed, but you won't all of make it far my look, because there are other so I'm across people hire a marketing communications, look like a marketing and lot of brands and brand use. So if you want to go that way, and I think a lot of you could do copywriting, copy. The problem, we had to get about $50 an hour. One thing I didn't understand as a person was a lot. I was making $35 an hour when I was at ASU. I've never made more than $60,000 an hour. I mean, $60,000. Wow. And, I pride myself on dollars an hour. But no, I want to be real with you, and I'm not even making that right now. Okay, so I jumped back to go forward. But $35 an hour with benefits and all of that is not the same as $50 an hour. You can't make it as a freelancer on $50 an hour. You've got to have a partner or something. So you need to do your research there. But I am doing copywriting and content development. I'm doing proposal writing. I'm getting more for that because I've attached myself to a technology and design company who can ask for more. Because guess what? People don't write and they don't want to pay for, but they don't know to pay for that. So you got to get yourself in with this group or another, like that project management
But
idea.
can I complicate what you're saying a little
Yeah,
bit? You don't have to relegate yourself just to writing.
No,
with an
you
English
don't, but
PhD.
it's the foundation of
Something
what
that
you
tends
do
to happen
well.
though, ask ourselves.
Yeah.
Not that there's
Your
nothing wrong with it.
researchers, your critical thinkers, all
Right.
of that.
And you guys, you're not out yet. Take advantage of being able to get the credentials that can back up being able to do those things. Because frankly, doing consulting work as a copywriter, yeah, it will pay you, okay, you can at least contribute toward your household income. But if you're like me and you're single and by yourself, that definitely doesn't cut it. But consulting with regard to data management, data structuring, data wrangling, things like that, which all of you could do because you understand how knowledge is constructed and how to critically think through that. And that's just a different application of it. You can consult and do things like that and make even a little bit more. So, and those are really tangible and really hot skills right now.
And with critical thinking, oh, go ahead.
So one of the things I think is also really important is to start even more basic than that, is like start exploring all the things that you enjoy. What do you guys find meaning in? Just because you have an English degree doesn't mean, oh, I have to write, or I have to do this kind of thing, or I have to do something that has to do with English. It doesn't have to be like that. I do a lot of design work now, and I really enjoy it. And I didn't know that until I got in there and started exploring. And now that I've taken some classes on design and done some work, I have projects. I have a website up now where I have my photography, my design work, and then I also bring it together with some digital projects. So it's not necessarily like, you have to think, oh God, I have to know a little bit of this and a little bit of that. No, start finding out what you guys enjoy. And you'll find that's how you're going to have meaningful work. I mean, there's times where I've been a copy editor, I've done copywriting, I've done ghostwriting, and it was horrible, and I hated it, and I could not create anything that was my own, and that was, that felt good, because I was always writing for like the CEO of the company to talk about, oh, we're changing our billing policies. Fantastic. Yeah, so I mean, and that was not meaningful for me at all. I hated it. I could write it. Structurally it was sound, but I just didn't enjoy it. And where I'm at now, I can write for ASU News, I can do some blogging, and a lot of the time too, I'll throw out ideas and say, how do you feel about me taking on some of these new, articles on GMOs and talking about Frankenstein? And they let me do it. So I get to actually write blog posts that are public, that are on the web that other people can find, and then use it for my LinkedIn. So I mean, I think a lot of it has to do with finding things that are meaningful to you that also talk to your exploring. I mean, even when you're here as a grad student, there's courses that UTO offers for free if you want to do Adobe products, if you want to just kind of tinker with it and play with it. You don't have to invest any money into it. Yeah, there's lots of resources on campus, and I think it'd be a good idea to just kind of experiment a little bit while you're here, and you don't have to pay for it, and start exploring those avenues and see what you actually enjoy out of it.
And if I can do shameless plug, Nexus Lab, we just started kind of like doing our outreach, and frankly, we had a really great workshop last week on design thinking that a couple of your fellow counterparts in the program came to, and it was really great. But we provide workshops with regard to design thinking. We're going to have one on project management, probably one on data management. But more than that, we're also trying to figure out ways to get those of you who are interested involved in some of our research projects, because we do research projects, some of which are outward facing to different companies and organizations. So if those are the things that drive you, because you're very, very much right that you have to find what makes you happy. It's like when you start talking about design, I immediately start thinking, I just redesigned our logo. That's something, I draw and paint and stuff at home. And, that was something I was able to do in my own job and really enjoyed it. But once you find what kind of drives you and what you're interested in, leverage all of your resources. And we at the Nexus Lab would love to be one. So, and if you are having a hard time trying to figure out what those might be and how those might apply, just ask people or ask, leverage those resources.
Well, on a very basic level, like, don't worry about posting your projects on LinkedIn until you have a LinkedIn account.
Exactly.
Get a LinkedIn account.
Yeah.
I mean it. Like, LinkedIn is both for the professional world, and who you know matters. And I'm serious. Go get a LinkedIn account and then link in with all of us. I'm going to put all of us on the line. One thing that I'm going to be a little bit. We should. One thing that's a little critical, just to be a little critical about the humanities, is that we don't leverage our alumni networks. And you will be shocked at the people who get you jobs. So like I said, someone I met at a party, first job. Second job, someone that goes to the gym with my husband. That's all. And it's just because I just knew these people and they posted something on their LinkedIn account and I jumped at it. These very basic connections. You would be shocked how much that leverages you. So go on LinkedIn, create your account, Google ASU type ASU graduate in the search bar, and everybody that comes up, send them a personalized note that says, hi, I'm in the English program, or I'm in the philosophy program, whatever program you're in, and I'd like to connect with you. Just to kind of follow you and see what you're really hear about your experience.
If I can kind of pop onto that,
Yeah.
I absolutely agree, and it makes me super uncomfortable. I hate networking; it's horrible.
Well,
It's
don't
awful.
link it with her then.
And it took me a long while to realize it, but it's absolutely necessary. And amazingly enough, I think probably many of you feel this way. You don't want to put anything in public that's in any way identified with you unless it's perfect. So I would hesitate putting things online. I didn't have a public Twitter account for a long while. And I finally had to get over that. And so I have a Twitter, which has my actual name, but same thing with LinkedIn. There's an academia.edu site that I learned about in Wales. And it's more, I don't know how popular it is over here, but most of my school friends use it, and didn't really think anything of it, but posted a few things, summary of my dissertation. Through that, I was contacted by History Psychiatry Journal to do a review. So I did a review of a book, which then in turn got me the contact to write a chapter in an edited collection, which then got me contact at the University Press, which is reading my book right now. So it's all of those tiny little relationships that you don't think are going to go anywhere that end up being hugely important. And also kind of with that, and I think we all kind of touched on it a little bit, know your worth, because you are worth so much more than you think you are. And you have to ask for it because no one is going to offer it to you. So be comfortable negotiating, be comfortable being bold, be comfortable just making, dates for coffee or hello, I want to learn from you. All of my jobs I've gotten that way. It's either someone knows someone or I sent an email said, you're really interesting. Teach me things. Not like that, but in a more professional way. So I think it's all of that. And even the self-branding, be aware of what you're putting online, be aware of how you dress, which is one thing I always have a struggle with. But so many times I have run into someone important around the university and I'm wearing, jeans and a sweater because I'm going to go teach, and that's what I teach in. That's the, the uniform. So keep a jacket at work, like simple things like that. Make it as easy as possible to market yourself professionally. Make sure that you have business cards with your full title on them. Things like that, really small, simple things that kind of add up.
Those are my thoughts.
I think another one of the things that I've really struggled with going out is feeling like I did have valuable skill sets, but literally not having the language to translate those skill sets into a professional environment outside of academia. So like I can write a book, but the way I explained I can write a book, like probably 2 years ago, was very wordy and probably not very accessible for people who don't understand what it's like to write chapters for a dissertation or whatever. So just figuring out how to translate my skill sets into resume language was very difficult for me. And one of the things, there's actually a lot of website thing without being simplistic. It says, if you have a PhD in English, you could be great at writing copywriting, writing proposals, writing all the things you could potentially write. And I was like, oh, I probably could potentially write all those things. I just never thought about it that way.
Well, there's also a dearth of grant writers, and grant writing doesn't get paid a lot, but I can tell you, you'd have plenty of work because there aren't enough of them. The work in philanthropy and foundations is also a place for English majors to go. If you care about making a difference in the world, nonprofit organizations, don't think that that means they don't make money. They have to make money. You want to get into larger, you want to be very thoughtful about which nonprofit organizations you target, but hospitals are nonprofit organizations, schools are nonprofit organizations. You want to get yourself potentially better educated about that particular sector, because I think a lot of liberal-minded, radical progressives go towards those kinds of fields, and you want to know how to make money in that field. It may not be the same kind of money, but the quality of your life could be enriched by choosing and going that way. You may not make as much, but you won't necessarily be ghettoized. There are ways to do that.
And you should do a little bit of research too. You can even go to ASU Jobs and just look through, click on the posting and see what it is that they're asking for, and start learning some of the jargon in different fields that you want to go into. There's specific terms for marketing and communications. The big buzzword I keep hearing in all the conferences is we need storytellers.
Yeah,
with storytelling. So learn the jargon, whatever you want to go into, start tailoring your resume after you get out of the CV form into that kind of jargon. Talk about how you don't have to devalue your skill set, you just put it in a different context. So you have to learn the jargon and do a little bit of research to see what kind of things look like good fields for you. And I can even, because I do marketing communications and a little bit of PR and media relations, and I'd be willing to just send a few links to Dawn too of things like PR Daily or these different groups that send out articles and links, and just have people, if they're interested, just look at it and read it, see what they're talking about and how they talk about things, and so just do a little bit of research and then learn the jargon.
Yeah, GSEA can start. We'll put a page on our wiki page with all kinds of information that we've started gathering here and that I've gathered through the process of talking, because we have 5 people here today, but I've talked to over 15 more that had conflicts with being here today or other things, and we really need to start a network of people that are interested in helping ASU PhDs with alt-ac, and we can do that. So
I would be willing also. I had to translate my resume because we were doing a proposal for the city of Phoenix. So we all had to have resume on my CV. My CV is like 5 pages or more. So I can share with you my CV plus my resume and how I translated that.
It can be super helpful to see them juxtaposed.
Yeah, really helpful. But storytelling is important. I want you to know, one of the things that gives me so much joy in my job right now is that I am a lifelong learner. We write websites for all sorts of nonprofit organizations, ones that have to do with autism, SARC, ones that have to do with medical research, Educare Arizona, Child. I've learned more about that. I love design, but it turned out that me spending time trying to design something was not a good use of my time. There were people who were experts at that. What is a good use of my time is being the writer and the director of writing. I hate it, but I know technology and I know WordPress. Today, I'm literally putting together. It's not writing. I'm copying, but because I have those technology skills, I can do them. But I did test after test. I never really wanted to be in business. I never wanted to sell Pepsi. I can't just write whatever. What I wanted to sell was making a difference in the world. So here, Arizona, educate people about what it means to be, to give kids pre-K education, that's so important. That lights me up. And I know I'm making a difference because websites are high visibility, and I'm actually writing a case for support for Arizona. They couldn't do it themselves, and I'm doing it on their website. I think public relations is another thing that I didn't know about, and I'm glad you're doing networking, because I was at a loss to know what else to do besides just go back to school and get another academic job. It wasn't, I would have liked to do those things, but how do you get in there? And you can stalk people on LinkedIn too. Stalk people.
But
sorry.
No, with that, I think we want to hear from everyone. And I saw Eric maybe want to ask the first question or make a comment.
No, I just want to make a comment. One thing that we do have in the Office of Graduate Education right now is premium content on Versatile PhD. So if you guys are interested in exploring that, it is a perfect resource. And ASU is one of a handful of universities that provide premium content for graduate students on Versatile PhD.
Thank you for that. So with that, we'll open questions, the floor of the panel. Yes, Christine.
Thank you for being I am curious, I know a lot of people here have previous professional experience, but the length of a graduate program, master's or a PhD, sort of, it kind of puts you behind for that experience to demonstrate your abilities in the professional world. So I'm just wondering if you have any suggestions about how to sort of use any of your past experience when you're applying for jobs, even if that, if it's been 3 or 5 or whatever years since you have done that, or if that is even if you see that as possible.
I have no professional experience outside the academy, by the way. All of mine was in that. So I don't think you're limited to just leveraging your old stuff. And frankly, if a business sees you only like really highlighting that,
They're going to be like,
exactly. So it really is thinking and figuring out how to translate. And it really is an act of translation. Translating those skills and experiences that you've had recently into quantifiable and desirable traits that they want out of the people that they're looking for. And what it really is, I mean, I would bet you, for most of you who are working on your dissertation, that you've been probably using a lot of project management skills to finish your dissertation. And frankly, you can't really put working on your dissertation really on a resume. But if you've been working on other projects, and again, that's why I'll keep emphasizing become part of other projects. Even if you're volunteering your time, that can go on your resume, because those same skills that you're using in your dissertation, or even as you're teaching, those are skills that most companies or most administrative positions within the university or elsewhere want.
Yeah. And it could be more than just I wrote a dissertation. Right. You could say it as something like, managed, monitored, and delivered a large research project, facilitated student workshops, things like this. And this is the jargon thing I'm talking about, is to look and see how they're talking about it and then put that in your resume. And I would use that in your graduate experience. And if you are, officer of a club or something like that, put all of that in there.
So the best thing I was ever told is by a woman who's the dean of student affairs at an Ivy League school up in the Northeast. She said, as you're working on your graduate degree, and even once you have your own job, you should keep a log of something that she calls PARs. So they're basically these little statements or narratives of explicit things that you've done. And it can be even the most minute things. So what it is if you think about, if those of you who've had interviews, they want you to, tell the stories about your experience in a particular way. So you have a problem. and then you had an action, the results, and then the final like summary of it. So if you can do that for every explicit little thing that you do as part of a project for a class or teaching, things like that, and keep a constant log and use action verbs in doing that. So were you developing? Were you analyzing? Were you quantifying? Were you improving? I mean, in fact, if any of you are interested, I have a sheet of basically all of these buzzwords for actions that you take that demonstrate higher or valuable to most companies because they demonstrate leadership and critical thinking. But if you'll keep a log of that, you'll start noticing trends and patterns that you can group together, whether it's for a resume or for, I still do this. I keep a log every day of what I've done, and I do it every week. I use it for my annual reviews, and I go in and I can negotiate with that. It's like I spent X amount of my time doing this, and it gives you data, which is really, really valuable.
And the other thing I do with that is I also keep what I call a kudos folder. So anytime there's somebody who's come back and said you were absolutely instant get done, it's in there. If I get something that's really awesome, for my analytics, Google Analytics, if there's a blog post that goes really well, or we get a lot of good response from a ASU news article that I wrote, that all goes in there.
Testimonials on LinkedIn. Yep.
I wanted to quick mention too that most of you have a level of probably intelligence, experience, or education in race, class, and gender that many people don't. So knowing how to translate that into company or corporate culture or nonprofit makes a huge difference for the population that I work for, is that I know how to use culturally sensitive language or research and do that kind of thing, because there's just too much that's incompetent out there and not sensitive, but you have those skills. You've been thinking through those things in your graduate work.
Any other question?
We're at 4 o'clock. I want to encourage you both to network with the panel here, and afterward at 4:30 we're having a social at La Boca on Mill, and I hope you can join us. I also want to say that we are continuing this discussion on November 21st at 3 p.m. It's a Friday. GSEA is hosting a roundtable discussion on the state of the English. We're going to have a number of our faculty who you may recognize. Eric, thank you for being here, faculty member here, and I think that should be noted. Anyway, but we're going to have a discussion with our faculty on the state of the English PhD and so for our future. So if you would like to join that discussion, it's going to be in 316 upstairs on the 21st at 3 o'clock. And I'd like to say that the GSEA board this year really feels very passionate about this, about the direction that we are student and our own lives. And it's very important to me and to all of us on the board that issues like this keep being discussed in public and in the English department. So I hope that you join us in November, and always talk to us on Facebook. Eric, would you like to, I'm sorry to have outed you, but
But I think this is really exciting, and I think, there are people in the administration and on the faculty who support this, and in fact, it will be announced at MLA, but you guys can know this ahead of time. We are one of 3 institutions nationwide that Mellon and the MLA are funding for a project to rethink how career pathways are forged, both in the training and after the PhD. So some pretty exciting things are going to start happening around here in the next few years, and you guys are going to be, at the center of it.
and Eric's been a great supporter of this project, and there are others as well. So I didn't mean to be, but I just think it's important for us to advocate as graduate students on our own behalf as well. So with that, I'll see you at La Boca, and thank you so much for being here.